Watch out, here I come.
Welcome to the first episode of the Brutus Poker Vlog. In this episode, we're at the Georgetown Poker Club in Georgetown, Texas. We're playing a round and round game of 1-2 No Limit Holdem, followed by a round of 1-2 Pot Limit Omaha with a $5 bring-in. We start the night by buying in for the maximum of $500 as the game is just beginning to start. We're starting five-handed. The very first hand of the night, we pick up pocket threes on the button. Action folds to me, so I raise it up to $7. The small blind calls, and the big blind folds, so we see a flop. The flop is as good as it gets, 8-3-2 rainbow. Small blind checks, and I check behind, trying to induce a bluff on a later street. Turn comes 10 of spades, checks again, so I make a bet looking like I'm trying to steal it for $10. But he quickly folds. Now we didn't win much, but it's always good to flop a set and win the first pot of the night. In the second hand, we have ace-8 of hearts in the cutoff. This time there's one limper, so I raise it to $10. And the big blind decides to make the call, as does the limper. So we have a nice sized pot brewing here, and we look for the flop, and it comes as pretty as it gets. We flop the nuts. King, 5, 4 of hearts. So it's a really good start to the night. They check to me. There's a lot of hands that they're going to continue with if I bet. It's going to look like I'm going to bet every time here. So I bet $15, half the size of the pot. But they quickly fold. So unfortunately, I don't think they had very much. But again, this is a great start to the night. A little bit later, we pick up King, Deuce of hearts. There's quite a few limpers. I make the call, and we end up with 6 players to the flop. We get a pretty flop. It's 7-7-3 with 2 hearts, and the under the gun player comes out betting $15. This is a pretty big bet into a pot that's only $12. We get another player to make the call, and so I think we have a pretty obvious call here, hoping to hit that flush. I'm not sure what the players have here, what they're representing. I hope they're on a worse flush draw than me. And we get the turn card that we want, the 8 of hearts. So it gives us the flush, and even better than that, the under the gun player comes out betting, and the hijack calls. Now we could raise here, but I decided to flat call, and let's try to make a move on the river. The river comes to 2 diamonds, so as safe as it gets. The original better checks, followed by a small stack making a $100 bet. Now I raise it up to $300, which covers both players here. I expect every worst flush to call. I expect some 7s to call. But the under the gun player folds, and the player who bet 100 thinks for a while before making the laydown. So pretty good start to the night. Decent sized pot here. I'm happy to pick up a nice win with my flush. A little bit later, we pick up Jack, Queen of hearts in late position. The action is raised initially by the under the gun player, followed by a call, and I make the call. So we go 3 ways to the flop, which comes queen high. So this is a pretty good flop for me. The raiser checks. The next player then decides to bet for $25. I've seen him make these kind of bets with a variety of hands, so I just make the call to keep the weaker hands in. The under the gun player folds, and we see the turn. And the turn is a pretty safe card, a 6 of hearts, and he continues betting for $25. So I make the call, not wanting to scare off any weaker hands, and continue on. Then we see a river. It's a pretty safe card, a 5 of spades, and he again bets for $25. I don't think a worse hand's going to call if I raise, so I just make the call quickly, and he shows king, queen. So I take a loss on this one, but probably lost about the minimum possible. All right, we're on to an Omaha hand where I have pocket 8s with a 3 deuce and an 8-3 suited. It's not a good hand, but the action is limped, followed by a raise on the cutoff. And I have the real opportunity here to spike a set and cripple aces. People in this game raise usually mean something very obvious, like a big pocket pair. And if I can get the flop I want to see, I can make a lot of money. So I'm going to make the call here, even out of position with this trash hand. So we get the flop that we were looking for, 8-4 deuce with rainbow. So we bet out, hoping to get called by these big pocket pairs, and the under the gun player ends up calling, while the cutoff folds. So really concerned what he might have. There's a lot of hands that could get there ahead of me. So the turn comes a 6 of diamonds. This is something that sets off my alarm bells a little bit. Now on the other hand, there's not very many hands that can beat me. There's only a 5-7 and a 5-3 that can beat me. And I have a 3. So I bet out for $100 to try to get hands that might have been drawing for a straight, but now have made 2 pair. Unfortunately, he immediately pots it to $410. This represents the nut straight and the nut straight only, or he's making a play with a monster draw. But I just don't believe that he's doing that with a draw here. This is a very straightforward player. So I fold, I show him the goods, and he shows me the 5-7-3. In another Omaha hand, we end up with Ace, King, 10, 5 with 3 diamonds, including the ace. There's a limp in front of me. I make the raise to $20. I want to kind of thin the field here, or at least build a pot if I hit it. I end up with 4 players calling, so didn't exactly thin the field, but we'll see what the flop brings. We get a pretty favorable flop, 10-8 deuce. Not the worst, not the best flop. We have top pair. The under that player bets $35, so I make the call. There's a lot of turns here that could change the strength of his hand, even if he has something like 2 pair now. Small blind makes the call as well. So we go to the turn, and it's a very favorable turn for me. It's the ace of hearts. So now I've got top 2 pair. I'm really only worried about sets. There's really nothing to be scared of. Small blind checks again. The undergun player bets 35. I need to bump it up a little bit. So I bump it to 135. Can't let any of those really bad draws get there cheaply. And the small blind calls, but the undergun player who bet folds. Now we get a blank river of a 5 of clubs, and he checks to me again. I just pot it, put them all in. He doesn't have a lot behind. And surprisingly, he folds, but he does show the king, queen, jack, 9. He had a wrap. He had a flush draw. I really dodged a lot of bullets on the river there. I should have put it in on the turn, given how big the pot already was. Should have just shoved it then and got my money. In another Omaha hand, we have 8-6-5-5 with 3 spades. Not the best hand, but the undergun player opens for 15. Another player calls, and I decided to stay the flop in position. We see a pretty good flop. Ace-3-5 with 2 diamonds. We flop middle set, and the middle position comes out betting $20. I raise it up to 100. I figure I have the best hand almost all of the time here and can get a lot of value from draws or 2 pair combinations. The under the gun player who raised folds, and the middle position thinks about it for a minute and calls. We catch quads! Boy, the night is just on fire. Everything is hitting. So we're going to try to slow down a little bit here, try to see if he can hit a flush if he's on a draw. Maybe he can boat up if he's got a pocket pair in his hand. We're going to make a lot of money on this hand. But unfortunately, he checks, so we check behind, letting him catch up a little. The jack of spades comes on the river, and he comes out betting $60 in this. Now, he only has about $30 behind more, so I shove in, and he quickly calls, and I show him the bad news, pocket 5s. Now, the player shows pocket 3s for the flopped bottom set, turned boat that he thought was good, and really not much you can get away at that depth. In this hand of Holdem, we pick up Jack 10 offsuit in late position. The action is raised early, followed by a call, and I make the call to see the flop. We end up going to the flop 3 ways, and we get a pretty favorable flop. Not ideal, but a really good one for Jack 10. King, Jack 10. So we flop bottom 2 pair, and the under the gun +1 player bets 25, followed by a call. I don't really want this to go any further, so I make this 100. I do expect to be called by hands like King, Queen, Jack, Queen. I'm in trouble against King 10 and King Jack, but I don't think they have it, so it's time to make them pay if they want to chase it down. And eventually both players do fold, and we take down the pot. On one of the last Omaha hands of the night, we pick up King 8-7-6, 8-7 of spades. There's a limper and then a raise to $15. Caller after that, and I make a call for $15. Both blinds and the under the gun player make the call, so we're 6 ways to the flop. And we get a pretty good flop here, Ace 8-8. Now, It's easy to think this hand is a little stronger than it is, but with 6 players in the hand, I need to be a little cautious, especially the raiser. So the original raiser bets 25. We get a caller, and I make the call. The next 3 players fold. So this is a little concerning. If someone has aces here, I'm in big trouble. The under the gun player continues to bet $35. It's very small. Middle position calls as well. So I make the call, hoping to boat up and evaluating my options there on the river. I get the 7 of diamonds on the river, and they check to me. So I really don't think anyone has a boat. If someone has an 8, they're very likely to call. So I bet $250, nearly the pot. But unfortunately, both players fold pretty quickly. One of the players did mention he did have an 8, so I might have been able to get a little bit of value betting a little less. But with the straight getting there, he might have been a little scared as well. So we take a mound of chips to the cage and end up cashing out for a total of $1,940 with a little over 3 hours of playing. So this is just a great session. We end up profiting $1,440. Only just a quick 3-hour session in and out. So this is just a wonderful game. It's a lot of fun to play in. A lot of social players, and we had a good time playing Pot Limit Omaha and some No Limit Holdem every Thursday night at Georgetown Poker Club.